That's right, Sam. The Chicago Bears are making moves, and I would go as far as to say the Chicago Bears are not done making moves. It's interesting because a lot of people, when you're talking about who a lot of people might be targeting now in drafts, and we'll talk about this here in a couple of moments with our guests. When you start thinking about it, people are like, hey, as long as the Bears go out there during the offseason, I get a couple of guards, sign a center in free agency, maybe sign a defensive lineman, maybe get a former edge rusher to come back to Chicago. All of those things feel like they could be on the table for the Chicago Bears. The free agency tampering period hasn't even started yet. We're not even till legal tampering. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I'm trying to think of the days because I'll be on the NFL Network here in about 10 days or so. And it's interesting to think about, like, we're far away from that. And that used to be the tampering window, like right around the start of March Madness. But now we're to the point of like, now March 1st, we've already got trades. Deebo Samuel was traded to the Commanders. The Bears have swung a couple of deals. And now it just gets earlier and earlier. A lot of other guys getting released. There's so many things going on, so much to get into. I should stop talking. So, Sammy, let's go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Adam Ray.
It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Wednesday night. You know what that means? It is time for Take It to the Rank. A great evening. I love Wednesday nights. Now, it is raining here in Southern California, which means training has been canceled for my U10 All-Stars, the select team. By the way, in case you didn't know, just to point this out to everybody, and I know he's waiting on the line. He can hear me in the green room. My team, we played in 4 tournaments. We medaled in each one of them: a gold, a silver, 2 bronze. But still, a very good run. But we have no training tonight. But we do have the Real World All Stars. And by the way, this season is terrible. But we also have AEW, and of course, we always talk about our friends at the Tape Never Lies Network. But before we send you off there, I said, let's get a little appetizer here, because when things are happening with the Chicago Bears, I always feel like it's important to bring in the 3 families, to bring in the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank, to bring in CHGO, and to bring in the Tape Never Lies Network. So to do that, let's bring in Braggs. Let's bring in Draft Dr. Phil. It is a huge night here. Gentlemen, how are we doing? Phil, let's start with you. How are you living?
Good. I'm doing great. Huge news over the wire, obviously, happening today. So it was a great day for Chicago Bears fans, and it should be applauded for what Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson did. You build through the middle out. That's what we've always said here. Ryan Poles has failed in that department, and
absolutely.
Third time may be the charm, I guess. That's where we are. And I don't want to sleep on Jackson, because a lot of people are just going to skip over him. But to get 2 guards, and Ben has a history with him. So to know the playbook, know the player, know what he brings to the table, the locker room. This guy isn't coming over here if it doesn't have Ben Johnson's seal of approval. And if you go back, and I will show patrons the all 22 coaches tape of Jackson playing with the Lions in this philosophy of his, Ben's. I mean, we have not seen an interior line play like his in 2023 for years, maybe since Kyle Long. So I just don't want that to get skipped over, passed by. And we all know what Joe Thuney brings to the table. And it is a 4-time All-Pro, 4-time ring bearer for the Super
Yeah.
Bowl and alpha in the locker room. I think that's the most important thing for this football team, Adam, because I know I'm jumping right out the gate.
Yeah, we're swinging. I was checking in on how you were doing, and you're already listen. You
This
hit
is
a
my
long
wheelhouse.
bump. This is right out of the gate.
This is my
80-yard
wheelhouse.
bomb to open the game. It's kind of like when the Bears were playing at SoFi, and I told Ryan Poles to throw one deep to open the game, and they went out there and they did it, and they did. So, Greg, I don't want to ignore you. First of all, how are you? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. NFL Combine, obviously a lot of fun, busy week. I've been encouraging both of you, talking to Phil this morning and you last week, Greg, like, got to have you both at the NFL Combine next year. It's always a lot of fun, and you get a lot of good information, but long hours, early mornings, late nights that are actually early mornings because you're staying out till about 3 a.m. in those smoky back rooms to try to see what kind of information you get. But a lot of fun. Then you recalibrate this week. And just like the NFL, there's no days off. They immediately go into making moves. And obviously, as a Bears fan, very excited for those because now we're starting to see this offensive line room and this team come to form. And ultimately, I guess the number one takeaway I have after the last couple of days is welcome to Chicago, Ben Johnson. Like immediately coming in, and we understood this was priority number one. But to be able to address these things before free agency's even begun here on Monday makes you excited for the next moves to come.
Yeah, and I think I told you I'm happy to go out to the combine. The NFL just has to give me more than 48 hours notice. I'm able to go. It's not quite as convenient for me to get to Indianapolis as it would be, say, Las Vegas, or if we had it anywhere nearby, I would have been there in an instant, but I couldn't do it. But Phil, I want to go back to you because
Yes.
I do like both. I like both of the moves. The only thing that stands out to me is that both of these guys are left guards. What is the vision for you when you look at these two moves? Where do you think these guys line up? Where do you think they're going to play in 2025?
Well, I'm gonna obviously be repeating this a lot today and throughout the next few weeks. Look at it like this: there's nobody in the draft. We'll take Booker for example. Do you know what position Booker plays, left or right guard, or do you just know him as a guard?
Just know him as a guard. Yeah,
exactly. Because guards are interchangeable, and it's not what these fraud blog boy nerds that have never coached played. I've coached offensive line for 12 years. That was my first job in coaching as a receiver and running back. My father threw me to the offensive line. You want to be a head coach someday? This is what you got. And I was like, well, and I learned tackle on the edge is a difference because you're an edge player. Now you have to deal with different techniques, where you're setting, where your foot is. But right and left guard is you're in the body of a war. So it's just where he's right-handed, he's on the right side. Now he's stepping with the right foot, stepping with the left foot. Everything's the same if you just pull back and stop listening to people. I know Olin was laughing about people saying it's such a big deal. Tom Thayer was on the radio backing me up with what I was saying as well. It's just, you're gonna say, hey, Joe, where do you want to play? I want to play the left guard. Okay, then guess who's going to the right guard?
Guess who's going to the right? Yeah.
That's it. And it's as simple as that. Now they're locked in, and it's just overhyped, overblown. It's finally refreshing that the Chicago Bears are identifying guards and putting them at guard. Now, this is where they're going. Thuney, left guard. Jackson will be the right guard. Darnell Wright, right tackle. Now you have 3 box check. There's a guy, Bill Murray. They extended him as exclusive rights free agent. I love this dude on tape.
Yeah.
He got hurt. It was very unfortunate because I thought that him being in there, he's going to set the tone, show Tevin how to work, and then all of a sudden he gets hurt. So that whole, we'll just call it monotony of injury and mental health issues and personality issue, whatever conspiracy issue you had with Nate Davis, Tevin Jenkins, Ryan Bates, Lucas Patrick, all of that has been healed over, glossed over with Ben Johnson and company making these two moves. Essentially, a fourth next year is like giving a fifth this year for a four-time Pro Bowler, the best guard in the National Football League. That should be applauded. I know there's people here in New England coming into my office at work today like, my God, you guys got our best lineman, man. I can't believe you guys got him for just a next year's fourth. That's where you got to applaud what the Bears are doing, identifying fits, building up the middle, recognizing the hole, and taking advantage of the situation. And that's where we are. I mean, I am so excited right now.
Yeah, and I agree with you, because what's been added to this room is professionalism. Above
100%.
just the talent is there. Obviously, back-to-back years as an all-pro will speak for itself, but this is about professionalism. A guy that last year only had one penalty all year in Joe Thuney, right? I mean, we know he's blocked for Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, so he understands a standard of greatness that those quarterbacks require and an attention to detail on offenses that won multiple Super Bowls. Joe Thuney has been in the playoffs every year of his career except for one. He's been to 6 Super Bowls and won 4 of them. And so now you have a guy in here that understands the standard of what it takes to be a champion. And then, like you said earlier, Phil, Jonah Jackson coming in and obviously understanding the standard of what Ben Johnson requires and an execution standpoint. Another offensive lineman who last year, albeit in more limited snaps because of injuries, but didn't have a penalty. So now we have 2 guards that have just come in here that obviously just have a different attention to detail and discipline and, an ability to execute an offense without creating penalties. How many times? I mean, Mercedes Lewis, all due respect, has had a great career. He had like 15 snaps on offense and I think 8 penalties.
Right.
So and this isn't just a player thing. That's on the play caller. That's on the quarterback. It's on the process. But you got to be able to have some professionals in that room to be able to try to get to a point where you're not making these mistakes and putting yourself behind the sticks. I was talking with a guy, Adam, that is close within the Chiefs organization, and this is what he had to say about Joe Thuney. Said, quiet leader, not a rah-rah guy, excellent technique, not necessarily going to run the offensive line room, but an all-pro, leads by example, and obviously a huge upgrade over what you've had. So he's going to be a lead by example guy. I mean, I'm always hoping that we're going to get the next Olin Kreutz, right? That's going to come in. And if you dare cross him, you are going to find out and meet your maker. I still think they need those guys in there. The coaching staff, I think, brings in some of that to the table. Guys like Dan Rorschach, Eric Bieniemy, and guys of that nature. But, they've added professionalism and talent to their roster and their offensive line here in the last 2 days. And as a Bears fan, that's exciting.
Phil, let me ask you, though, because I've heard this a lot from some people. They hate giving up all this expensive draft capital, like giving up a 6th and the next year. Like, you would have thought from some of these people that we gave up 2 first-round picks for these guys. I know you touched on this, the next year's 4th is – this is a ridiculously insane discount. Like, there's no other way to spin that.
I'll say this, like, when you're looking at draft, it is a gamble in the first and so on down the line. The percentage of getting a starter in the 5th or the next year's 4th round, the equivalent of what Joe brings to the Bears now, a year ahead of time, is a 28 to 30% swing, maybe lower. So you're looking at I guarantee the Bears were going to, this is in the corner of them definitely going after Trey Smith. So they wanted to go after Trey Smith. They put the tag on him. Now all of a sudden that opened up a conversation whether it be from the Bears side, Jeff King talking and Poles talking to the Chiefs about, well, what about Thuney? Or them saying, we're going to keep him. What do you got? What about Thuney to you? And opened up this communication that ended up, I mean, this is a home run for a team in desperate need of what Greg was talking about, is whoever was texting him. This is a massive improvement. And when you get that on top of somebody else who's a professional, who's done it before, surrounded, I mean, the Bears had all these guys with their own, again, a cultural issue in Chicago with Eberflus. Everybody knows how I felt about Chris Morgan. I thought he was a shoe shine boy, one of the worst coaches I've seen in regards to watching their tape. And I couldn't believe it, that that's what they're being coached, and that's okay to put on tape. That would never happen with anybody that I know as a coach on the offensive line, what they were allowed to do and play like. Now, this new staff comes in here preaching identity, technique, and accountability. Now you're cooking with gas when you get someone that's a proven winner. Maybe not the loudest guy, but I want to say that he does have an Olin Kreutz to him, because he's a winner bringing those rings in there and nobody else in. Look at it like this, Adam. Those draft picks that a 6th round pick this year, which 15% shot that you get someone that's going to help your football team now.
That feels generous to say 15%.
You're 100% right, though, Phil. Like, wouldn't it be all right if he's not the rah-rah guy? Fine. Not everybody has. You don't have to lead by yelling at everyone. But I think you just touched on it right there. It sparked a nerve in my system when you said the rings. How about Joe just wears his 4 rings the first day he walks in that locker room? I mean, these players need it, not just the young players.
Needs it.
Not
what
just
about
the young
this,
players,
Greg?
the vets too. I mean, DJ Moore,
Yes.
how long has he been in the league? He hasn't been on a winning team. Jalen Johnson, same thing. How about somebody come in there and put their rings on the table for a minute?
Greg, stay there, because I think this is important. I said it to the patrons on our pop-up this afternoon. Drops the rings on the table, right? He's worked with who? Tom Brady and Pat Mahomes. What does Caleb look at? A champion blocking for me, right? The whole disposition of learning and focusing on football raises to another level when a guy drops his rings on the table. And if anybody else is screwing around, all this dude has to do, Thuney, is look at the quarterback's talking.
Yeah.
That's it. And everything, because he is a proven commodity. A cultural mishap that has been in Chicago are 2 shoe salesmen as coaches back to back. That's why I have nerves about Ryan Poles, but Poles is fighting back, or like Arturo Gatti. He's coming back in the late rounds to give me some pride here that you're going to do this the right way and listen to Ben Johnson and his staff. Got to get these guys. They totally went out of their way to get Jackson. They identified, okay, for 100% believe Greg is right. Went out there. We're going to try to get Trey Smith. And that relationship was going good. And the Chiefs, to their credit, recognize this is a young player that we can continue to build on. We're going to tag him. And that opened up, and they identified, okay, this is our next move. Good on the Bears that they got it. Packer fans could be a little spicy and jealous again, because it's a different era, guys. This isn't, more hope for the Bear. This is actual building block. What is Greg talking about? Brick by brick. This is building the foundation of your offensive football team happening right in front of your eyes, and doing it with a 2-time All-Pro.
Yeah.
Right? 4-time Super Bowl champ and the best offensive guard in football. Drop a mic. Goodbye. That's how you do it.
Well, Adam, Jack Silverstein brought this up from Windy City Gridiron, great Bears historian. He brought up the name Reuben Brown. And that's certainly
I said that same thing today.
I thought that was an interesting comp for sure.
Olin Kreutz talked about him coming into Chicago. He was an afterthought in Buffalo. And Olin told a funny story the last time. He was like, dude, we're in practice. And I'm like, this dude isn't going to be anything. And then we get into our first preseason scrimmage. And he's like, get ready, buckle up, every effing person. And he's yelling and he goes out there and just proceeds because he was listed as the 2. He wasn't starting in preseason. He went out there and beat the crap out of everybody. And that set the tone.
Yeah, there's something about you don't have to be a rah-rah person. I think that, this comes from the movies and stuff like that. But I know in a professional industry where when I was doing comedy a lot, you would be in some of these rooms. And it's funny where somebody I think of 2 guys who stand out to me, Jon Stewart and the late, great Richard Jeni, who would walk into a green room or whatever and not say a word, but you just knew that they were all about business. And you were like, okay, it's not that you had to stop your conversations or anything like that, but you're like, this guy is this is what he does. And obviously they're 2 of the funniest people who ever lived. But it's a different vibe. I mean, and there's some guys who will come in, and I think Bill Burr will talk to everybody and do his thing. And it's the same person that you see on stage. Some people are different. And I think for Thuney, he just needs to come in there and be himself. And he's got the cachet. And as you said about the two all pros, now I do a lot of work for the NFL.com where I talk a lot about Hall of Fame players. And one of the benchmarks for the Hall of Fame is all pros. And when you start getting it, that's always something that you look at. You're like, hey, once somebody starts getting into 3 and 4 all pros, it starts to become undeniable that this person's going to be a Hall of Famer, unless you're Patrick Willis or whatever. But still, it is a big deal, and it is a big deal to have both of these guys. My initial thought, though, and I don't know if this is correct or not, I don't think that the Bears are done. But do you think, would the Bears have made this move? My first thought for Jonah was that this is a depth piece. That I'm not even thinking that he's going to be the starter, or is he so good that he absolutely has to start?
No, to me, we talked about this a little bit on our show today. They're paying him $17 million in cash. Okay, now you can parse through, what the cap hit is, how much the cap versus how much you're paying versus how much that affects the Rams cap, but you are not paying a guy $17 million this year to sit the bench. So Jonah Jackson will be your right guard. I guess because he had more snaps at center last year than guard. Is there a conversation there? I doubt it. From everything you hear from the Rams perspective, he got injured going into training camp. Then he got beat out through injury by being replaced, and the guy that came in was doing a great job. So now they had to find a spot for him on the line because they're paying him too. And so they try to find him at center. He's a guard. So I believe to Phil's point, Joe Thuney likely is going to say, yeah, I'm a left guard. I'm the all pro with the 4 rings on my finger. And they're going to say, yes, sir. Here's your left guard spot here, sir. And Jonah Jackson is going to be, slotted in at right guard. And then the question is, do you pay Drew Dahlman? Do you draft a center? Do you do both? I think all exciting questions, but I think Jonah Jackson for sure is cemented as your starting right guard next year for the amount of money they're paying him.
Bill, is it a disaster if he ends up being our center?
No, because you're looking at someone who's going to be a starting offensive line. Everything's about building the interior with quality starters. But listen, I'm with Greg here. For even outside the money, Adam, he went there. He was an all-pro in 2023 or Pro Bowl. He might not have been all-pro. I don't want the freaking blog.
Yeah, just Pro Bowl, and it was he had a great. He got it as the Mitch replacement Pro Bowl. It still had a solid season. Not taking it away, just giving you the context.
And we know that Pro Bowl is popularity, and especially when the offensive line, once you get one, and especially back in the day or now with Collinsworth talking about you, now you're getting 2. You might have stunk this year and someone was better than you and you got a 3rd because of your reputations. That's how that works sometimes. But watching the tape of him, Adam, again, and looking at what transpired in LA, he has a great year on tape for me going into free agency and gets paid by the Rams, goes out there, gets injured. Then someone else steps in his place. And now they have, especially with that offensive mind out there, now you have cohesive for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
A unit that's working together pretty well. Now let's put Jackson back in there because we paid him. That's what the Bears would do of past. Let's just put this guy back in there. We paid him. Politics. You don't ruin what you have cohesively on the offensive line. And to their credit, they didn't. And you saw where they went. Now, that doesn't take away what he can do, versatility, but he's going to be your starting right guard. And it's going to be a big improvement from what you've had in Nate Davis and Matt Pryor and so on down the line. Even Tevin Jenkins. Tevin was learning on the job. He was a tackle that they moved into right guard. Then they moved into left guard. Same thing they did with Kyle Long. This offensive line maneuvering and minutia has been a pain in my you-know-what for years. Just put them in those cohesive spots. You're the right guard. You're the left guard. You're the left tackle.
Well, and when you watch the Detroit tape that he's involved in, you can see how they're pulling him out. He's getting ahead. He's paving the road for the running backs, David Montgomery and company. And so that's, again, he understands the standard of what Ben Johnson's expectations are. Everybody always talks about the pass game, but let's talk about how he's going to affect the run game. And so to me, I see, I know Rank always tells me don't pay attention to the chat, but I can't.
Damn it, Greg. Don't pay attention to the chat.
I can't help myself here.
Built that way.
He's going to help make my point because legit Pack fan who's been in all Bears chats all day, rent-free, as the kids say. I hope you're enjoying the Bears programming you've been involved in all day. But he says paying 2 guards over $14 million. One stays injured, one will be 33. Bears will bear. But the caveat there that he's conveniently leaving out, and it's a Packer fan. It's okay. We understand, intelligence isn't your strong suit. It's okay. But the point is, none of these are long-term investments. This is 2 guards with veteran experience, one that's a 2-time All-Pro, where you can come in, and as Ben Johnson is trying to implement an offense where he's got a lot of work to do to develop Caleb Williams, which is one big task at hand. Well, you also have to install an offense. So you need offensive linemen you can trust. So sure, they could have drafted a bunch of offensive linemen, but now you got a bunch of rookies out there that have to have their own developmental curve. And so that's to get to my final point. Phil, you brought up Bill Murray. I loved that they're bringing him back because it's a pastime. The Bears figure out how to develop some of their talent on the offensive line. You talk about Chris Morgan. He wasn't developing anybody. Look at who the offensive lineman Dan Rorschach was a part of that he developed down in New Orleans. So let's get Bill Murray in here. Adam, you said a couple weeks ago on CSU Bears, don't just fill one spot and be done with it. Double down on it again. Go out and get a center. Draft somebody at 10 like Will Campbell. Trade back and draft Gray Zabel. Don't stop. You got plenty of interior offensive linemen in the second round or the third round potentially that you can add to this and start developing those guys behind these veterans that you just brought in on a short-term deal. And then we can come back to legit Pack fan and have a little laugh at his expense.
I love how worried they are. Like they try to pretend that they're not, but they come in here and they love to just tell everybody I don't know who they're trying to convince, us or themselves, but it is a new way of doing business for the Chicago Bears. So talking about the draft, however, and before we get to the draft, and once we draft these guys, we'll be going out there and getting all their trading cards. And I want to remind everybody that at Windy City Sports Cards, they specialize in buying and selling all things related to Chicago sports. Whether you are a diehard fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, Sky, Fire, whatever, we've got you covered with a large, extensive selection of sports memorabilia and collectibles. And in addition to their Chicago-focused items, they also offer a vast collection of sports trading cards and memorabilia from your favorite teams and favorite players. And as March Madness is starting, I think back to some of the Larry Johnson cards I used to have, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could have remembered what I did with those. Larry Johnson headlined the card show in 1990 at the Anaheim Convention Center, and I met him, and I got an autographed photo of him that he just I took his baggage up to his room and was talking. I was talking about the Big West, talking about Cal State Fullerton. I'm like, God, Fullerton's got Sabalos and Bowen and all this stuff. So he was really impressed. He's like, hey, he's like, let me grabs a box. He's like, here, let me give this to you, Adam. That has been lost over the years. If anybody ever finds a Larry Johnson UNLV photo of him shooting a ball over that bleeping Quinn Snyder, that was mine, and I want it back. But talking about the draft, though,
yeah,
obviously the Bears have done a nice job with two things. Does this change the priority for them in the draft? How does this affect the draft board? I know, like, and you were still talking about Dahlman. Like, we don't even know. There still might be more moves in free agency.
right.
But Phil, as it stands right now, what is the priority at spot number 10?
Well, you look at the holy trinity of football. That's how I have always preached with the Bears. You want to build inside out, but when you get into the draft, you don't reach for need. You go based on quarterback, pass rusher, offensive tackle. Then it's corner. That's how you rank it, or 3 technique based on whatever your philosophy is there. Dennis Allen is a more aggressive guy, so corner might be more of a priority than people believe right now.
You know what? I'm with you. Like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but not enough
No.
to keep me from doing it. I forget who I was telling, what show I was on, but I'm like, do not be pissed when we end up taking a cornerback super early. I think that's
Or
a
there
huge.
could be a guy in free agency that nobody's talking about. Al Harris is probably my second favorite coaching hire on the whole roster because of the teacher. But I don't want to get off your question. So Holy Trinity, pass rusher there. Who are the pass rushers available at 10 versus the offensive tackle? I mean, you cannot go away from that philosophy in my mind, in that you're not going to go up running up and take the running back in the deepest running back class that I've seen in the last 15 years. So, I mean, I have some backs that I believe could be big time backs that are going to be able to get in the second round. And I think if they love Genty, because I know everybody's on that, that'll be them. For me, and then you have the defensive tackle from Michigan, Graham, that everyone's talking about too. But for me, I told the patrons already, my number 1 tackle in this whole draft, he's top 3 players in the entire, maybe the number 2 player in this draft is Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas. At 20 years old, what he's able to do athletically, what he would be able to do next to Joe Thuney and replace Braxton Jones, and you have your bookends tackles that are both young bucks and Darnell Wright and Calvin Banks Jr., you are cooking with gas. We're talking about an athlete beyond. So if he was on the board, Adam, and I was the GM, that would be the guy that I'm running up to take for the Chicago Bears. Now you've done exactly what Ben Johnson eloquently spoke to you about. I embrace coaches that are transparent and confident, because that's the only way you're going to be successful. Ben has both of those things so far. He pointed out, well, Carolina rebuilt their entire offensive line in 1 year, and you saw by the end of the year how they were cooking, right? He came out and said that you can't build this. One of the media members, I think it was Wiederer, my guy, that asked him that, can you build it? And he pointed out, Carol, yeah, he believed you can. Look what they've done. Free agency haven't even started. And we have these 2 trades, 2 guards. Now you go into the draft and you get a Kelvin Banks. I mean, I would be the happiest guy alive. It's not the sexy pick for everybody in fantasy world, but for me, it's the priority to protect Caleb Williams. Braxton Jones is very weak on the edge. Now he has potential, but it just hasn't shown up in regards to being able to anchor and set that edge the right way, scoop, block, and stay aggressive in his technique. Now, maybe, how do you say his name, Greg? Roshner?
Dan
Rochard, thank you. Comes in here and works it the way he does and gets more out of it. And I believe coaches, I've said it many times with you, Adam, coaching is the issue in Chicago. Now you got a coach. This guy can maybe squeeze the 10% out of Braxton, and they see it another way. But that's what I would do.
Yeah, I'm with you, Phil. To me, before going to the combine, I didn't feel as comfortable with who I thought, because my whole standpoint was, if you're going to take a player at 10, I want them to have the ability to be your left tackle of the future. Now, if that doesn't work out and you've got to kick him into guard, so be it. But I don't want it to be a thing where he has no chance of being your left tackle of the future, because I'm with you. Braxton Jones, all due respect, I mean, I think he's fine. He's serviceable. He's mostly available, but now he's coming off an injury. Ryan Poles mentioned that in the very final question of his press conference from Brad Biggs. So I felt like that was certainly a calling of out of sorts, where you're saying, hey, we have to see how he comes out after the injury. That's to me saying, well, we don't know the full picture. And so now, after talking with these tackles, I come away going the opposite. And that for me, Phil watches the tape. I feel out the person. I have to get up in front of them, because that's where I start to get an idea of like this feeling out process. The tape is never going to be my strong suit. I'm not an offensive line analyst, and I'm never going to pretend to be one. But I'll say this much: listening to Josh Simmons, listening to Will Campbell, who, it's like, oh, is this like an overhype? This ND, that every year you get the darling offensive lineman. He's got this clip where he talks really maturely, so now everybody wants him. Well, no, to me, he did sell you as you listen to him. Like, wow, this guy is the real deal. Gray Zabel, same thing.
Love Gray Zabel.
Is this a NDSU?
But he's not going to play tackle,
where every year an NDSU guy is the hot name, But to me, these guys, there's enough there. Even Tyler Booker. You keep going down the list. You mentioned Kelvin Banks.
Well, you got Membo
from Missouri. Yes. Each one of these guys, I don't figure it out. However, Phil and the Bears and everyone
Will Campbell's my number 2. He is a left tackle. I want to get that out of here. All these guys talking about arm length and guard. He's got to go to guard. No, this is a left tackle, because what he has, Adam, are a dancing bear, a ballerina-esque feet. And his ability to move and recoil and punch and do the things. I mean, his matchup, it's like saying Mike Tyson can't box. He just knocks people out.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous how these people start taking analytics too far into the equation. A 5/8 of an inch is not going to push someone inside when they've done something so well on the outside. So he would be my number 2. If those two guys are there, you have to take them, in my opinion, to what Greg's saying, because they both have the ability to be pillar pieces in your offense. The last time the Bears did that via the draft was Jimbo Covert and Keith Van Horn. Yeah. You have your Darnell Wright on the right side. Guy played injured all season. I was told by one of the players, the pain that he put himself through set the tone. Now, he is a big, cuddly bear sometimes, and we got to get that nastiness out of him as his personality. His play is nasty, but to play injured and have people take the shots at him but still perform as well as he did is a testament to him, too.
That right there is the point, right? There's going to be injuries on the O-line. There always is. It's a nasty sport. It's a brutal sport. So you got to draft your guy for the future that's going to mold and be ready to take over for Braxton. But there's also going to be injuries. And if you have guys like Will Campbell, who potentially have versatility across the line, Gray Zabel, who could potentially have versatility across the line. I mean, They just brought in, from Kansas City. This guy's played every position on the offensive line in his career. And so that's, to me, having that versatility is important. Having somebody set up for Braxton Jones, because let's face it, even if Braxton Jones, Adam, has a great year this year, now you got to figure out if you're going to pay him and how much that's going to cost. I'm rolling over that position and I'm setting myself up for the future, which then, if all things go right, now you have your money allocated, ready to pay your quarterback who has now worked out and won 2 Super Bowls. That's the whole idea of how to build a successful franchise. Now they got to put it all into fruition.
Yeah, it's one of those instances where I feel like, and again, this goes back to when we were doing our needs for the Bears on the CHGO a couple of weeks ago. I was like, guard, tackle, guard, tackle. And I feel like all this, like, we're going to sit here and we're going to keep talking about this, and we're going to be throwing around these guys, and they'll be like, oh, at number 10, the Chicago Bears select Will Johnson, cornerback, University of Michigan. And we're going to be like, yeah, should have seen this coming. And it honestly, like, this is something that Ryan Poles showed a number of years ago during his first season when he took Kyler Gordon and he took Jaquan Brisker and he didn't take George Pickens and he did not take Christian Watson, which is what a lot of people wanted. Who are some of the running backs, though? Because I know that people love Genty. And looking it up, Daniel Jeremiah has Genty as his number 3 prospect in this entire draft. But I kind of hope he goes to the Raiders at like number 6 or whatever it is, wherever the Raiders are, just so we don't have to hear about it. Like, I just don't want to hear about it. Oh yeah, we would have taken him if he was there at 10, but he's gone. Who are some of the other running backs? Because I remember a couple of years ago, and I remember this distinctly, I was so upset at the draft, and I love this running back out of Iowa State named David Montgomery. And I'm like, F this. I'm so pissed. I was so pissed that I went to Costco, and Phil texted me while I was in Costco being like, we just drafted David Montgomery. And I screamed in the Huntington Beach Costco. I'm just finally now allowed to go back to that place because I made such a scene, such a fool of myself. Who are some of the running backs? You talk about a deep class at running back. Who are some of the guys that we could be looking at, perhaps second round, maybe even the third round for the Bears this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, Amarian Hampton, he might go in the first round as he size, speed, and what he did in production. I'm a big Quinshon Judkins fan. Him and his partner, Travion Henderson, we're going to be breaking those guys down with the tape. All of these guys. Genty obviously is that. I'll get into Genty. Let me give you some other guys. Scattaboo, Arizona State. We saw him at the end of the year. I'm a big fan because he's a tone setter and he's way more able. I wish he was able to, or did run, to kind of put that out, that light, that spotlight. How he didn't want to run. I hate that. Caleb Johnson from Iowa. I love this dude. He's just what the doctor ordered. That's the kind of back. He's going to be a full-time workhorse running back, the kind that moves the chains and breaks off some big runs because he's able to break tackles and he's got great hands. That's something we're missing when you have Swift on the field. This guy has elite vision. Him and Judkins fit that mold. Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee, another running back that I believe can be a starter. I know Shane is a huge fan. He's on the smaller side at 5'8", but he puts in about 200 pounds, runs through tackles, and has great vision. A guy that my buddy, our guy, Matt Waldman, Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech. Look for him. Another smaller, built-up running back that is able to be a starter. A lot of people like Devin Neal. I really like Devin. Versatility, what he brings to the table. The guy that ended up blowing up the draft, as TTNL fans will tell you, has been a guy that I've talked about all offseason, in my guy, Tootin, Rootin' Tootin out of Virginia Tech. I said to our patrons, there's one guy that's a sleeper. I don't know what he's going to test, but when you watch him play, and I've watched 3 games of him, I haven't watched his tape yet. I was being very transparent 4.5 weeks ago. This is a guy that we got to keep our eye on. And sure enough, he goes to the combine and freaking runs and times. And it just checks the box because Virginia Tech, their quarterback situation and the things that they were dealing with, this guy's making the most of his opportunities. Obviously, Donovan Edwards, everyone's sleeping on him. I know Shane really likes him as a late round guy, a guy that can go in there and give you reps and break big runs. I mean, this draft is very deep. The 2 kids out of Texas are going to give you some stuff in the. That's why I don't know if you go out of your way to, draft a running back that high. The kid Harvey, RJ Harvey from Central Florida. That kid, someone's going to get a starting running back in that kid. Again, these guys are the way they treat running backs based on Saquon Barkley. We don't know. The kid from SMU, what's his name? Oh God, SMU running back, another guy that could be a real sleeper. Woody Marks out of USC knows. Listen, you got a bunch of backs in here that could be in the right system.
Brashard Smith
out of SMU. Tremendous vision and versatility.
Have you had a chance to take a look at Damian Martinez out of Miami? Our producer Steven's a big draft guy, and he loves Damian Martinez.
I like him a lot. This is a guy that I feel like, obviously, being in that RPO scheme with Cam Ward, didn't get the focal point of running the football, but when he got the opportunities, you're looking at a guy with great instincts and awareness. Hold on, I might 6 foot, 217 pounds. I didn't get what his times at the combine, but listen, you got 18 running backs I have that are going to go in the top 4 rounds. Okay.
Well, that's
top
my
3.
biggest question, right? Because I'd love Cam Scatterboot on this team. Like you said,
I do.
A tone setter. He'd literally be perfect for this division.
100%.
I mean, everybody saw how he finished last year. He's been doubted his entire life getting to this point. You put him on this team, let him be the new David Montgomery for Ben Johnson's offense. My question is does he go in the 2nd round or the 3rd round? If he's a 3rd round pick, you're running to the podium. But then
you got 2 seconds there, Greg. You got 2.
Right. But I'm still looking at trenches for my first 3 picks because I'm getting trench drunk here. So now I'm looking at running back.
We give you 2 trench picks. We give you an offensive
I'm getting
tackle
drunk,
and a DM.
man. I'm no stoned unturned. Never again. Right? Like, I mean, this is where it's going with me. But to that point of where these running backs are going to fall, I do find it interesting, Adam, where it's like, okay, everybody knows Ashton Jensen's going to go 10. Then Amarian Hampton seems like now he's going to find his way into the 1st round. And my question is, going into the draft, with everything that happened with Saquon Barkley and how the league is always following the trends, is there going to be a run on running backs now, even though there's a lot of them? Now, once the names start coming off the board, now these teams start getting itchy trigger finger, where now all of a sudden there's a run that people aren't expecting like we've seen in years past, and running backs going to make its way back into the trendy selection.
Yeah, I don't know that we're ever going to go. I do and I don't. I think Saquon Barkley is such an outlier, and I don't think that we're back. I don't think we're back to the point of where we have guys like, Barry Sanders was a top 3 pick. Oh, that's right, because they just passed him over. That's right.
Tony Mandrich.
Yeah, they got Tony Mandrich. I love looking at that draft and seeing all the studs. You're like, great pick, Packers. Like, you're lucky Ron Wolf found what's his name? What was that quarterback? Oh yeah, Brett Favre. Other than that,
take that, Nagler.
Yeah, Nagler. You guys out there winning your Toyota-thons. That's the funniest thing to me. It's like, I love whenever Toyota-thon starts. I'm like, this is your time to shine, Packers. Go win your meaningless game. Go beat the Saints in December in an outdoor game at Lambeau and think that you've won the Super Bowl. because you know that when it comes to push comes to shove, nothing's going to happen. I'm looking at there's a guy, and this is because I'm biased. He's from here ish. If you're living in Southern California, he's not from here. But if you're looking at it from a national level, where you guys are, Carson Schlesinger, who's a UCLA kid, a linebacker.
Linebacker, yes.
I'm looking. I don't know. I know that he's in Daniel Jeremiah's top 40, but whenever I see white linebacker, I'm like, well, he's going in the third round. Honestly, like I just like, nah, let's be realistic. Like
Luke Kuechly.
Yeah, but no, still, like, unless you're that player,
He is a stud. This kid is a stud.
Again, maybe I'm being myopic because I know that sometimes I look at some of these people's mock drafts and they're like, yeah, in the third round we're gonna get Will Campbell. You're like, no, that's not the way this works. At least take a moment to look over some of these things. God, some of these are funny, but I'm like, Carson, like, I know linebacker, not necessarily a leave, but Jack Sanborn's leaving. I'm like, I don't know. I really like the idea. When I see him play, when I was watching UCLA,
he met with the Bears, says Shane.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, see, I think he's somebody who can play, and I kind of really like him. And
listen, it's a position of need. You have
sort of, yeah, right.
You have Tremaine Edwards coming off a poor year. And that's giving him a lot
of credit.
It was a bad year. Okay. TJ Edwards was the only semblance of some consistency there. And, Jack had his moments, but he had a lot of missed tackles.
Yeah.
And not in the right place. But again, the whole culture, the coaches getting fired, all that stuff put into the bottle. Dennis Allen is looking at this football team and just looking at the whole thing, how many of these guys are leaders? The safety, Bird, that's it. Caleb is a young kid. Everybody else, I don't know. I've never seen a football team with 8 captains and not one of them an offensive lineman in the history of my life. That's how necessary these signings were, Packer fans, that get somebody like Thuney to come in here and be that presence, set that tone, and now you got to do it on the other side of the ball. Tremaine Edmonds, maybe a restructuring that could save some money here for these guys, for the Chicago Bears. I know there's a couple opportunities to save some money, but
yeah.
No, it's funny because I was about to say when you said Kevin Bird and Byard and Tremaine Edmonds, I was like, Phil's a football coach when he's pronouncing everyone on the team's name wrong.
Everybody's name is going to get
52,
wrong.
52, get over here. Bird, get your ass in line. Like, forget how to pronounce your name. That's hilarious.
Kevin Byard.
Oh my God. No. It reminds me of one of my first seasons of coaching football here. And I had Luna, Lana, Lila, Isla, Kaya, and then Beverly, and then Leona. I'm like, Jesus.
You have every
Yeah. It was really a bad scene, but somehow we were able to make it through. But it's the same thing, like, you get number 8, get out there, run, do your thing.
I'll say this much in regards to this draft. And obviously it hasn't been a pretty road getting here as Bears fans, but okay, you need trenches bad, right? You need guards, you need center, you need an edge, you need D tackle. Well, this is a great offseason for those positions. Luckily enough for us, things never seem to fall our way, right? And this all started a couple years ago where by the gift of Lovie Smith and God, we end up with the number 1 pick. And then that rolls over into the next year where the Panthers gift the Bears to the number 1 pick, which gets you the number 1 quarterback, QB1, Caleb Williams. This year's been ugly, but it leads you into Ben Johnson, who by all accounts and a lot of people that are around the league that have to coach against him. And he asked Kevin O'Connell what he thinks of Ben Johnson. Ask Brian Baldinger, you talked about earlier, Rank, couldn't speak more highly of the football acumen that Ben Johnson has. And it just feels like things, even though we can't see it because all we're staring at is what's right in front of our face, but things have fallen into place where we're getting guys we don't always get. And now an offseason where things are also, the stars are aligning, where we have these priority needs and an ability to address those needs. And you're already seeing that the last couple days. And so for me, as a Bears fan, that's exciting. Yes, you can definitely say that Ryan Poles built this team backwards. But I also just trying to look at this as a bigger picture. Well, I'm glad Caleb Williams is a Bear. I'm glad Roma Dunze is a Bear. I understand trenches are a need, but now look at this year. Look at the core. Everybody said, oh, trade back last year because you could just get your quarterback every year. Doesn't look like that's the case at quarterback this year, all due respect. Well, who's the wide receiver you're bringing in to replace Keenan Allen this year? It's not as easy. Not as easy as much as I like Restrepo from Miami. That's a third round, fourth round guy. You know, that you talk about heart, Phil, but regardless, my point still stands. Like, you need quarterback and wide receiver. Look, the Eagles won with the trenches. They also won with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown connecting on some pretty big passes in the Super Bowl. So you need everything. You need a good coach too. And so it all isn't going to come together in 1 year. And I just feel like
it is.
In the last 3 or 4 years, certain stars have aligned to get us to this point where now we have Ben Johnson, a really, really encouraging coaching staff behind him, featuring Eric Bieniemy, Al Harris, Antoine Randall, and Dan Rorschach, and the D-line. So, like, I just think, and then you look at the roster standpoint. Yes, it was built backwards, but maybe for once, damn it, this will all actually come together, and we can actually have a palatable team that is fun to root for.
Based on the situation as it stands now, walking into the draft, based on my way of building a football team to win, champion. I don't build teams to compete. I build them to win. I always say that to the parents. Like, we're here to win first and foremost, because you can walk away and the first thing you're going to say, they don't win. So let's get that out of the way. You want to win. My job is to put the best players on the field to help us win. That's your son, because he's working his butt off, then he's going to be out there. If he knows his assignments and plays the way he's supposed. Same thing here. It's no different. So now looking at this football team, what they've started right before free agency, we haven't even hit free agency. This could change in an instant leading up to the draft. Right now, your biggest need is pass rusher. So is it Khalil Mack coming back? And that's another piece. Is it you're going up to the podium and taking the kid from Georgia right out the gate, and he's your pass rusher? There should be no, I wanted this. You got to understand that's how the pass rushers don't last long, Adam.
Yeah.
Right? They don't go into the second round. So you're going to have to make a choice based on the free agency. You're doing it right. You got your 2 guards. You haven't even signed. You've traded away late round picks, nerd boys. They mean nothing.
Well, the draft capital, though.
They mean absolutely nothing to your football team right there. We can recoup those in a simple trade down from 10 to 16. You've recouped a third and a fourth, and all of a sudden, what do you work? Stop. Right now, you're looking at this offseason, to Greg's point, all these things might have happened in the airs of the universe of football to get us to this point where we could finally do it the right way with a real head coach, a real coaching staff, and Ryan Poles, for good or bad, needs someone else to help him find these offensive linemen and defensive linemen that are going to bring this championship quality offense and defense to the Bears. Right now, you need a pass rusher.
Yeah.
You do. That's
well,
priority one.
But again, I think the same thing. If Khalil Mack were to rejoin the Bears, similar to the conversation we're having about offensive linemen, where I don't believe that you can have enough I don't think that either one of these guards precludes us from taking an offensive lineman in the first round at number 10.
100% agree.
And similarly, if we get Khalil Mack, again, I don't think that precludes us from
100%.
taking an edge at number 10.
I 100% agree with you. But
then you know,
I'm sorry, you got nothing. You have Montez Sweat, and nothing. You traded for Darrell Carter. He's going to be a free agent. What else do you have? You have the Austin Booker, who I believe needs so much work on finishing. He's got an immense ceiling.
Yeah.
You did it again, Darrell Taylor.
No, he said, pronounce my name Darrell. So I got one right.
I mean, you said Carter.
I did say Carter.
It's okay. I'm just busting.
It's funny because, like, you ever have friends who are the worst texters in the world, but you can still decipher what they're trying to say?
I never.
Voice.
I know exactly where he's going with.
I know exactly what he's talking about.
My whole thing. I'm terrible with names too, but when I use Jenny as my force field for that, and so when we go up to people, I know I don't know their name, but I'm supposed to because I've literally been talking. They've been my friend for 3 years, and I don't know their name. I have Jenny come up like, "This is Jenny," and then Jenny, and he goes, "I'm Jenny," and then the person says their name, and then boom, there it is.
Yes,
but you're right, Adam. I mean, you don't, and that's maybe through what you just said. Maybe your answer of what they're going to do the first day of free agency. Now you can do many moves, so you don't have to just do one. But maybe they are going to attack pass rush as soon as free agency hits. Maybe it is Milton Williams. Maybe it is Khalil Mack. Maybe it is Chase Young with his familiarity with Dennis Allen. And now you've checked another box for just 2025, not forever. You've now checked the box for your roster to win right now, but it gives you an opportunity through that of heading into the draft at number 10 with a ton of flexibility to still get either or when it comes to the trenches. Don't think everybody wants to talk about Ashton Jeanty. I agree with you, Adam. I don't think he's going to be there at 10, even to tempt the Bears. And B, even if he does, I just think through the failures of what the Bears have been through the last couple of years, I just think it would be so surprising if they were to go that route.
I'm with you both here. I think you set the deck and you take the best.
Yeah.
That's what you do. And that's what great teams do. Last year, be transparent. Odunze was my number one receiver over the other two, Marvin Harrison and them. But I still would have taken, this isn't rewriting it, I would have taken Brock Bowers there because I said this is a talent that's dynamic and beyond. This is what you do. And they didn't. So to your point, Greg, you can go out there, you can sign a left tackle tomorrow, and then the draft comes up and there's Kelvin Banks Jr. sitting there, and you have him so highly ranked, you take him as well. And you keep building this roster to be championship after champion. That's what you do, because you never know an injury, and you always take the best, especially when they're that elite.
And Samuel's in the chat saying there's no way you draft an offensive lineman now unless it's left tackle Justin Simmons, because you have to get a player that makes an impact this season with your first round pick. Samo, you have to take how many more chances are you going to have a top 10 pick theoretically if your team ends up being good? Two,
if he's over Banks for me.
And if
anyway.
I don't care, whoever plug and play whatever name you want to put there. Two, if he's a great player, he's going to make an impact. Braxton Jones is not put in, as Shane Marcel likes to say, isn't put in marker as the starting left tackle. He now has to earn that with Ben Johnson. And if you draft a left tackle at 10, he's now competing with that person. And if you want to talk about instant impact, well, you draft a top 10 left tackle, he's probably going to play like one. And now Braxton Jones coming off an injury and his, admirable, start to his career where he came from. But at the same time, this is a business and competition breeds success. Bring on the competition. May the best man win.
You say all that, and with the number 10 overall selection, the Chicago Bears select
Tyler Warren.
tight end Tyler Warren, Penn State. I already used Will Johnson. Those are always my two go-tos. Will Johnson and Tyler Warren are always the guys like, here's who we're drafting.
Please don't let it be Tyler Warren, because Mark Carmen brought him up on our show like a week and a half ago, and everybody just rightfully blasted him for that. And so if he gets that, there's nothing Carm loves more than his comeuppance on the crazy Bears fans. So then I'll have to hear it forever. So
I will say this: the Bears are going to have to take or sign several tight ends in this offensive philosophy. And I'll tell you what, they also need running backs. And this is a deep draft.
Well, again,
tight end and running back.
You running back and tight end aren't a priority, but again, going back to this stars aligning, dynamic I'm trying to sell to everyone, you don't need running back and tight end as top priority. Well, guess what? That works out because there's a ton of tight ends and running backs that you can get at the backside of the draft. So it just
100%.
feels like things are working out, but now Ryan Poles has to take this
left tackle or pass rusher
and execute it correctly.
Hopefully, Greg. Sorry.
So Abdul Carter is going to fall in the draft, and then we're going to take Will Fisher. No,
I would die.
I just said. By the way, what do you? I know this is a. What do you make of Fisher? I see a lot of this stuff coming through, and I'm like, oh, he's probably going to be available. Like it feels like, or no, I'm not sorry. Mike Green, sorry, the Marshall guy.
I was like,
the Marshall guy. No. Mike Green.
Yes.
He has the one highlight play from the Senior Bowl, and then everybody's like, oh, top 30, like top 30 to now top 4. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, there's something about like it's easy to make those kind of plays in a drill, but I want to see him work with other dudes on the defensive line, and I don't think I got enough of that.
Mike Green is very twitchy on tape, and what he had, he comes from a bigger school down here. The off the field stories and stuff have been whispered about, and I guess he addressed it, Greg.
Yep.
So that's the concern. I knew that he was going to flash in the Senior Bowl because of what he brings on game day. I mean, watch Notre Dame Marshall. Watch what he does to, it's not just some fluke thing, Adam, that's happening at the Senior Bowl versus a guy that's nervous because the scouts are what. This kid's a great football player because he's got great athleticism and bursts. The off the field stuff, how they handle that. Again, I feel like the Bears have been too choir boy stricken.
Yeah.
With things like that, where they pass on a Randy Moss, you pass on a Warren Sapp. And I'm not a Sapp guy at all, but sometimes you have to take these guys that are going to help your football team win. That should be the priority. And Mike Green, again, Greg, me, you, we can hear whispers from people. The sit down, and Greg is right. I want to go to the combine because that's important. I want to get the energy. I get the energy off the tape, get the energy off the human being and how they are. Mike Green's energy on tape is outstanding. I mean, if the Bears took him, that's a pass rusher that's going to wreak havoc on people. He is not a guy that stops. And if Dennis Allen has identified that, I know he likes that bigger, bulkier defensive end, and that's Stewart out of Texas A&M and Mikael Williams from Georgia. Those guys fit the body type that Dennis Allen likes, like Chase Young. If they go, I would be happy if they go out and get Chase Young. I'm a fan of that because you're setting the tone on the defensive line. But to answer it all depends on their investigation of the tape is good.
Yeah, and to this point, there hasn't been an investigation of the new accusation. And so, like, when you ask, what about Mike Green, Adam? I was talking to Phil and Shane about this last Wednesday when I was in Indy. Like, I get uncomfortable even trying to address it appropriately,
Right.
because we don't know the full details, and that's not fair to the accuser. It's also not fair to Mike Green until you let the process play itself out. I mean, anybody can accuse anybody of anything, but at the same time, when you have an accusation like that, where it's to be taken seriously on all ends, and this isn't I guess probably the biggest red flag of the whole thing is that this is the second time that there's been an accusation on this same wavelength. He had a similar one in high school that was investigated by the police and dismissed. And so you just kind of take that for what it is. You try to take it on its surface. You heard him address this stuff for 20 minutes at the podium while he got, peppered by the entire media about it. And he, I thought, handled it very maturely and confidently, if that's the right way of saying it. He looked at everybody directly in their face and didn't, stutter or, stammer when he was trying to explain, how this all went down and how he thinks he'll come out of it and what he's saying to teams. Now, again, let the process play itself out. If he ends up, none of this ever comes to fruition, then I would say he handled that entire scene very maturely for a guy that has a lot of pressure on him. There's a lot riding on, his career here in this moment. But at the same time, if he did do something like that, then, I think all teams should not want to invest in someone like that, bringing him into their locker room. And then you'd say, well, how did he address, how was he able to address it so maturely? Well, you can be coached up too, right? And so it's, like I said, it's a delicate thing that I think you have to be careful about. So if you just strictly stick to the tape, obviously he's got, a ton of power behind him and a high motor, and he can get to the quarterback. So we'll see. It's just one of those things that has to play itself out. That being said, if there was no wrongdoing, then I'm impressed by the way he handled it. Then you combine that with the tape, and that's the kind of guy that you'd have to consider if you're the Bears. But I still think there's a long process potentially that still would have to be made out. And the teams are going to be privy to a lot more information than we ever will. And so you kind of have to just take that into account as well. We can have our opinions, but the teams know a hell of a lot more than we do.
Yeah, that's very true. And I know there's a long time to go before that we even, the draft process is going to continue to play out. We're still going to have visits and all that stuff. And again, like you said, we haven't even gotten to free agency. I think that's the best part of all of this is that we haven't gotten to free agency, and yet we've already addressed the guard position. We're still going to have a decision or a possibility of chasing Dahlman as our starting. I know you mentioned it briefly, Greg, but Phil, what do you think about, would you still, I saw somebody earlier today being like, well, now it's a mistake to go after Dahlman, but I don't know. What do you think about that? Do we still make a move for him possibly?
I think you go out and you get good interior football players. Dahlman is that. And I don't think it's a mistake at all. Now you've totally rebuilt the foundation of your football team when it comes to a position where you've been completely overmatched and you're trying to run these outside zones and you're getting penetration all the time and you're trying to run with a rookie quarterback and he's scrambling, avoiding 50 plus sacks. And you got blog boys worldwide not looking at this picture realistic of what this quarterback was able to do despite what was in front of him, who was coaching him, and the surrounding talent that was walking and not running routes. And it just was a culture crusher all over the field. So now you're setting the tone there. I would be all in for Dahlman. But if they've identified Gray Zabel, I believe will be a Pro Bowl center. Like, this guy will convert to center and be an absolute star. Like that. Just watching what he was able to do at left tackle, he can slide into guard and be I think he'll be a great center. Like, seriously. So could that be they trade down, they take Zabel at center, and what they answer next would be pass rushers and Milton Williams. You get that defensive tackle in here. How they handle this it's so fun. I enjoy it so much to watch when you do it right. And finally, I'm with Greg, and I'm not wearing a meatball hat because I'm very critical of Ryan Poles. I feel like he should have been fired. I really do. But this is his way to punch back and fight back and build this the right way, a way you haven't done in a long time. And if you go out there and you've identified Dahlman, because Ben Johnson said it, Adam, and I think Sammy needs to hear this as well. The center is the most important position on the offensive line. It's been that. I've said this, Greg will tell you, since the old network I worked at. I tell everybody, when you have the center, they're in control of how everybody else is moving. And the quarterback, belief in that person that's going to protect them from the closest threat to them, it's important. And we have not had the right center since Olin Kreutz. So
I'll say this much with Dahlman. Like, I'm not opposed to solidifying our offensive line, in a week span, so we know what it is going into next year. But that being said, as I was trying to say to the Packer fan, who I guess must have went off to dinner or something, because
you shut him down,
here.
Greg.
That's
you
right.
He
gone. Crushed his little cheese soul, and that's okay. But as I said, when you bring in the guards you have, those aren't necessarily long-term investments. Even if you were to extend, the guard you bring in, all-pro guard from Kansas City, to me, those aren't things that are going to put your franchise, kind of in a bind. Now, how much Dahlman's going to cost for how many years, that's potentially a different discussion that I think there's a threshold there and a decision you have to make. So is Evan Brown potentially another option there as somebody that does have some familiarity from Detroit?
I'm a big fan of Josh Myers.
Myers.
I'll say this much, of him.
And I'm
Packer. We'll take the Packer.
See, and I'm fine bringing in a veteran center of any ilk, because I am finding a way to draft a center in this draft, whether it's Gray Zabel through a trade back in the first round, which I would love, because now you're adding more draft equity to the second and third round. But then I'm also looking at Seth McLaughlin out of Ohio State, who got injured.
Underrated player.
He's very underrated, and he's going to be underappreciated because of his size, because of his injury. But go watch, if you're able to go find where you hear Donovan Jackson and Josh Simmons speak to the media at the combine last week, and go listen. They're both asked specifically about Seth's impact on that offensive line, in that room, in their prep leading up to each game, and then the adjustments he'd make at the line of scrimmage, sometimes in the middle of, a cadence by the quarterback. And so when I heard those things, I'm like, hey, Bears need to try to take a look at this guy if he's going to be available at the back end of the draft as a center they could potentially develop. Of all the mistakes Ryan Poles has made, and they have been aplenty here the last few years, to not draft a center last year, when you had 14 centers available at your disposal, you'd be a year ahead of that development right now. So they missed the boat, but there's more limit. If you talk about all the things that seem to be working out in the Bears' favor, center is not one of those this season, this offseason. So it puts them behind the 8 ball, to Phil's point of how important that position is and how important that is to Caleb Williams to have that center quarterback, connection there. So, but you're putting lines in the water to see what comes up. So you put the Ricky Stromberg line in the water. It's a long shot, right? Everybody's writing him off, but hey, this is a guy that originally came in highly touted. Now he's got the injury stuff. He moves teams. He's on the Bears practice squad. Put another line in the water with Josh Myers or Evan Brown, or if you really want to go big fish hunting, you get Drew Dahlman so you don't have to think about it as much. And then put another line in the water.
Ryan Kelly's out there.
Ryan Kelly, Seth McLaughlin. Again, so just put lines in the water and see what comes up for air. That's my
Harris. Nick Harris from Cleveland, some veterans that are out there. It doesn't always have to be the name guy that comes in here. I always think of the Bears signing Kreutz Chris Valerio drafting him, and they're like, who? And he goes in there and becomes a starter for 12 years playing. He wasn't a name guy. I know Orange Cassidy's talking about the kid from USC who, yes, kid plays tough. Watched some tape on him at USC, a later round center, Jonah Monheim. You check him out.
Imagine if you're able to trade back 5 or 6 spots, draft Gray Zabel to be your center, to go along with the 4 offensive linemen that are in place this year, and you add a second round pick to that bunch. I mean, maybe that's too much you're getting in a trade back. I don't know. Shane would have to be the one to tell me that as the smartest man in the room. But like, to me, trade back, draft Gray Zabel at 16, 17, just throwing numbers out there. Add another second round pick, and now
you got to look pass rusher.
Right now that I'm trench drunk, you've got all the different options at your disposal: running back, tight end, cornerback, pass rusher, and you got 3 picks to make them. That to me, I think, would be the dream.
We missed when we had an opportunity to get the kid from Minnesota at center that went to the Giants.
Oh yeah.
We missed on that opportunity. And again, center has been Chris Morgan never put a priority on that position like he should have. Again, it's unfortunate, but it is where we are.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I am all for them going out and signing a veteran center, to be honest.
Yep.
Okay, to your question, I just let you know that Zabel is somebody I've looked at on tape for hours, and Shane had brought him up way back in November, and we started looking at this kid, and there's no doubt this is a future Pro Bowl football player. He's not sexy for everybody, but he's going, like Greg said, you trade down, you take this guy that's going to be on your football team for the next 10 years, being the next Olin Kreutz type of football player. I love Tate Ratledge, but he's a guard. The kid from Jake from Texas, University of Texas, is my number one. Jake Majors. He's my best center in the draft. But I would put Gray Zabel over him, Adam.
Yeah.
So
a lot of possibilities right there. And when we're thinking about trading down, I think that the only one scenario that I'm hoping is you got Seattle, although I don't know if Seattle would do this, because Seattle is number 18. Like, who needs a quarterback? Who wants to jump up for Shedeur Sanders when he falls? But I think that, there's just not going to be an opportunity. So we might be stuck at 10. I don't know who's jumping up for what. I don't know if the Colts or Falcons or Cardinals want to jump up for anything, but again,
they might jump up for a pass rusher. So say that's the corner.
Cornerback one.
The kid from Michigan, the corner from Michigan.
Will Johnson,
Corner,
your boy.
Tight end.
Maybe Ty Warren.
Ty Warren. Somebody coming up for Ty Warren.
All right, so it's not pass rusher would be okay.
This is where don't get defeatist, Adam. This is where we do the wheeling and dealing on Twitter,
right?
And we start selling this pick to the highest.
Put the energy out there for him.
Put the energy out there. All right.
Listen, Adam, you have a platform. You're on NFL Network, so every day on the show, my sources are saying that many teams are trying to trade up to the number 10 pick. So get your bids in.
Why don't you report that right now, Greg, and then I will have a way to be able to start saying
I
that.
just heard from a source.
I was talking to somebody in the Chicago media.
I've been pushing the Gunnar Jackson agenda already. This is what we're doing.
The Chicago media seems to believe that there are a number of teams that are trying to move up to number 10. And if I'm the Chicago Bears, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Okay, got it.
Little do they know, as you're referencing the Chicago media, it's my dumbass.
It's CHGO. Greg Braggs with CHGO. It sounds so official.
But now I got a profile picture where I got like a suit on, so it looks way more legitimate. So we could sell this down the river so fast.
100%. I think that you need to be that person because I listen. Our line producers on NFL Insiders, they're not going to go look up how credible is Greg Braggs. They're just going to hear like, hey, you know what?
To go a few tweets to find the Taco Bell tweets.
Doesn't matter.
You got to really like hype up that pick. You can do it.
Listen,
Greg's right.
Still, they let Dan Orlovsky say whatever, and he's got worse food takes than you. So that's fine.
Flip-flop more than a Daytona Beach.
Oh my gosh. In any event, listen, I know that I've kept you guys far too long. Really do appreciate the opportunity to get down and talk about this, especially, again, I'm not sitting here thinking on March 5th that we're going to be able to go and just talk about a virtually like two-fifths of our offensive line has been revamped in the window of about 48 hours. And I think it's an exciting time. And I think it's something of like, this is something is just a signal of what is to come. And we know that Ryan Poles does not sit around, whether you agree with his moves or not. He makes them. He goes out there. He's not afraid to take some big swings. He's not somebody who's laying up. He's not pulling out the utility rescue club. He's going driver off the deck. And I always love that. And I love you guys for being here. Draft Dr. Phil. And of course, I'm assuming the Tape Never Lies Network's going live in about an hour.
Yes, sir. We're going to have Chris Emma of 670 Score. He's the one who broke the news about Khalil Mack having interest coming back to the Chicago Bears. We're going to talk about that and obviously everything we just talked about.
Yes. So if you want to get more from more credible sources than me, go check out the Tape Never Lies Network. And of course, Greg Braggs, CHGO. I will be back there on Friday. Is Carm coming on?
You will. You've got
to stay away from that guy.
Oh, you don't know this yet, but you have to hold down the fort without me, and you're going to be with
my God,
Vogue and Carm. I'm having my knee surgery on Friday morning.
Those guys don't care.
So you got to hold on. I'm entrusting you to hold down the fort.
All right.
I'll get your ducks in a row for that. But
do me a favor, Adam, when you're on with Carm, just turn to him and say, "Listen, there's no positive in throwing interceptions."
Oh my God.
Okay. Do that for me.
He's taking a risk. Yeah. Leave risk for the board games. But in any event, thank you so much for being here.
Got to get you back on the keeping it 100.
Yeah, we'll be back. The problem is, it's like we're right in the middle of our AYSO season. It's going so well. All this gold, or gold, silver, and bronze that we're accumulating. But it's a lot. But I'll be back on. Yeah, we'll get back on
for the draft, bro.
We'll get back to it. I'll be on very shortly. But great seeing you guys. Love you all. And thanks to everybody who stuck around here today and hung out with us. It was a lot of fun. Appreciate you. So we'll see you all later. So for these guys, I'm Adam. Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.